Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
Welcome, everyone, to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano, and as always, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with family, friends, and on social media. Now, last week, I talked about the administrative state, limited government, and how we're losing our national identity. And I got a lot of questions out there. But one question kept coming up, and I figured I'd talk about it for this episode. Many of you asked, what is our national identity? It seems like so many have forgotten what the American identity is and what it means to be American. And that's a big part of the problem of what we're seeing today. There's been this organized campaign to redefine what national identity means, what it means to be American. And it's through design, because if we don't know our identity, well, then it's easy to mold it into whatever the powers that be want. It's easy to reshape the United States going forward, and that's exactly what they want to do. So in this episode, I want to focus on the war against our national identity. I want to explain what it is and why it's important on a broad level. Then I'm going to zero in on America specifically. The assault on our national identity, it's insidious and it's strategic. It's not just a matter of forgetting our roots, but it's a deliberate attempt to manipulate and rewrite them. As we'll explore in this episode, understanding our identity as Americans is crucial for preserving the principles and values that define our nation that were laid out by the Founding Fathers, something that has led America to become the greatest country in the world and the most successful country. I'm going to get into the reasons behind this assault. It's not a random occurrence. It's a calculated move. One aspect involves the sinister agenda to substitute our national identity with state supremacy, and it aligns with the broader globalist agenda aimed at eroding our sovereignty and the cornerstone of any independent nation. It's not just happening here in America. It's happening throughout the world. It's critical that we uncover what's going on, because the battle for our national identity is intense and we need to preserve it. So this episode isn't just about awareness. It's about reflection on who we are, and it's a call to action. We have to protect the essence of what it truly means to be American, and far too many have forgotten. Now, before I get into this topic, there's a lot that happened over the last week. Unfortunately, for Congressman Adam Schiff, Senator Dianne Feinstein passed away at the age of 90. And the reason I say unfortunately for Adam Schiff is because Schiff wanted that seat so bad. He didn't want Newsom to appoint someone because now, in all likelihood, he's going to have to primary to get that seat. Governor Newsom appointed LaPonza Butler as the Feinstein replacement. She actually has a residence in Maryland, so she's going to have to switch her residency. But she is someone that checks all the boxes of what matters most to Democrats. It's not about competency. It's not about qualifications or experience. It's the fact that she is a black female lesbian. Now, how is a weasel like Adam Schiff going to challenge a black female lesbian when he is an aging, angry white male? See, that's the problem when your party operates solely on the basis of identity, on the basis of the color of your skin or your gender preferences. But I'm glad, because guess what? No one deserves it more than Schiff. Schiff is the one who tore this country apart. He knowingly perpetrated a lie for years, saying that he had more than circumstantial evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. He divided this country. Now, the biggest story with the Feinstein passing is that she's been gone for a long time, actually. It was well known that she was suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. And for the last few years, she's a shell of herself. They tried to hide her, similar to how they tried to hide Biden in the basement. She was an empty vessel that had no idea what she was doing, no idea what she was voting on, where she was. Her staff, who was unelected, the people that didn't elect her, had to direct her on what to do and how to vote. That's how shameful and disgraceful our politics are. Rather than let her live her remaining life with her family, they kept her in the Senate because they needed the vote, and they didn't want Newsom to be able to appoint anyone that could challenge Schiff's coronation to the Senate. What they did to her, it's elder abuse. It's as simple as that. And it's not just Feinstein. It's the same with McConnell and Fetterman and Biden. If you don't have your faculties, you shouldn't be serving in office. It's as simple as that. A lot of people make it about age, but it's not really about age. It's about cognitive abilities. And it's an embarrassment when the world is watching and our Senate and White House can actually be commercials for visiting angels. So that's a problem. Another story is obviously New York State Attorney General Letitia James going after Trump and his businesses, the Trump org. It's obviously a political hit job. They are trying to destroy him. They want to destroy him mentally, psychologically. They want to destroy him financially. They want to destroy him politically. It's clear. It's an all-out assault. I mean, the Trump organization has been operating for how many decades? And yet now they want to bring the suit saying he overinflated his values. I mean, the truth of the matter is that if the Trump org was doing this, well, then they were doing it for years. And so when he was donating and contributing to Democrat coffers for Democrat candidates, the Democrats had no problem. But when he ran as a Republican for the presidency of the United States, well, that's when they declared all-out war on them. That's when they went on their seek and destroy mission. It's a political hit job, but it sends a chilling message. It sends the message that you could be successful in the United States. However, if you cross the Democrats' path, if you cross the deep state's path, well, then you will be destroyed. That's the message it sends. How many other companies out there overinflate their values? Now, it's not like he overinflated his values and he's getting hit with tax fraud charges or anything like that. Nobody was harmed. He paid back any loans he got. He got better interest rates. I'm not seeing what this case is really about, but again, it's not about the case, actually. It's about the man, and that's what it comes down to. And in another story, just to juxtapose this, you had the first public hearings on the Biden administration Biden impeachment inquiry, and apparently Democrats in the media industrial complex, they number one, don't know the difference between an impeachment inquiry and an actual impeachment. And they also want to disregard all the evidence that exists about Biden corruption. You know, it's not like there's just smoke. It's a five-alarm fire. And throughout the hearing, Democrats in the media, they were gaslighting Americans because they kept on invoking President Trump's name, saying that Republicans were simply doing his bidding. They're trying to exact revenge. Others say that if President Biden is guilty of anything, it's that he's guilty of being a loving father.
Come on, give me a break, man.
Then you have those who are saying that there's no evidence of any wrongdoing by the president. None whatsoever. They don't point to anything specific. They don't present any evidence to refute anything that the Republicans are saying or any of the accusations. They simply state it as a matter of fact and hope others believe it. But they also have the media industrial complex behind them that will push this messaging. And so they can shape minds and narratives. And that's what they do. Then in a bizarre incident, you had one Democrat congresswoman blurt out that the border is secure, which had nothing to do with the impeachment inquiry and is completely distorted from reality. It's simply a lie. But I'm not going to waste my time on that one. Now, for those that say it's nothing more than revenge as a way to get back at Democrats for what they did to Trump, well, there is some truth to that. We have to admit that. However, two problems. First, what the hell did the Democrats expect? I mean, I warned when you had the first political impeachment of President Trump, and I say political impeachment because it wasn't about any high crimes or misdemeanor. It wasn't about bribery or treason or anything like that. When I say political impeachment, there was zero evidence of wrongdoing. And I stated then, I warned the Democrats that they were opening Pandora's box, and we can expect every president going forward to face the threat of impeachment when the president and his party differ from the majority party in the House of Representatives. See, the Democrats devalued and cheapened the impeachment process. They used it as a political weapon, and our founders warned about the weaponization of impeachment. It's why they made the bar so high when it comes to removing an official from office. They understood the consequences of removing someone solely based on politics and dislike, rather than based on harming public trust and doing irreparable damage to the society. Now, in order for someone to be removed from office, you need overwhelming bipartisan support, because the founders were smart enough to realize that that's the only way you can elevate it above the factions, above the political parties. And it seems Democrats, they never learned their lesson. I mean, just think back to when Democrat Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid used the nuclear option and got rid of the filibuster for the selection of judges. He said he was only doing it for the lower courts and not the Supreme Court. Well, what happened? When President Trump nominated Justice Gorsuch and Democrats tried to filibuster, then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell pointed to Reid's nuclear options, and he nuked the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees. Remember, whatever precedent one party sets when they're in power, the other party is going to use that precedent, and they're usually going to expand on it as well when they get to power. So this whole thing was largely predictable. Second, the idea that President Biden was simply a loving father is an outright lie. He was an enabler, Let's stop pretending. He wasn't a loving father that was trying to help his son through his son's substance abuse issues. He enabled his son. If he was truly concerned about Hunter's substance and sexual abuse issues, he wouldn't have sent Hunter all over the world to collect money from questionable countries, from nefarious people. More importantly, we have Hunter Biden's text messages, and in one message, he complains to his daughter that at least she doesn't have to give him half her income like he does with his father. Now, could Hunter Biden be lying about that? Of course, maybe he is. But that seems like something pretty unusual to lie about and make up. I just don't see it. But the thing that's most important is when Democrats scream that there's no evidence of anything illegal occurring, that's a lie too. We have videos, text messages, witnesses, former business partners, whistleblowers, bank statements, 19 or 20 different shell companies.
Come on, give me a break, man.
Seriously, what more do you need to understand that this guy is thoroughly corrupt? I just don't get it. As I said a few weeks ago, the Biden crime family has all the hallmarks of a mob, where you have money laundering and everything gets kicked up for the big guy. He gets a piece of all the action. Now, this is an impeachment inquiry. It's not an impeachment. It's a fact-finding investigation to lay the foundation for any future impeachment. And I don't believe that President Biden will be impeached. I certainly don't believe he will be removed from office. He's not going to be removed. I mean, you have 48 Republican senators, assuming all Republican senators vote to remove President Biden from office in any impeachment, which I don't think all of them are going to do that. Well, that would mean that you would need 19 Democrats to join the Republicans. So does anyone realistically see that happening? I certainly don't. But the inquiry allows Congress to get a hell of a lot more information to expose the corruption that exists within the Biden family, information that the Department of Justice refuses to turn over, and they use the excuse, well, it's an active investigation, so we can't really talk about it. We all see where this is going, though, and I guarantee you there's going to be more evidence of corruption that will emerge, and Democrats will continue to deny this corruption. Now, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to explain the attack on our national identity, what it means for our future, so hang tight. I'll be right back. P.A.S. report listeners, our government is out of control. Criminal tax hikes, hyperinflation, a full-blown recession. It's part of the grand plan. The billions of dollars Biden keeps sending to the corrupt government in Ukraine, the trillions in new taxes he wants to shove down your throat, the electronic banking system crash that resets everyone to zero, checking accounts, saving accounts, 401ks, IRAs, all of it, zero. But you don't have to be a victim. Protect your money and get up to $10,000 in free silver to do it when you call Goldco. Goldco's helped protect over $2 billion in gold and silver for people like you and me. They're offering you up to $10,000 in bonus silver when opening a qualified IRA account just for being a supporter of the P.A.S. report. So whether you want to protect $50,000 or $500,000 or more, this is your opportunity to protect yourself from our out-of-control government. Don't be a victim and call Goldco today. 855-656-0196, 855-656-0196, or go to goldco.com/PAS report. Welcome back, everyone. So the idea of national identity is extremely important, and we see it under attack, not just here in the United States, but throughout the Western world. And understand, as national identity dies, so too will Western societies. They cannot survive this. And I'll talk about it broadly first, then get into the American national identity. Because national identity, it's essential for social cohesion and unity within a society. It's particularly important in a free society where people are allowed to express different opinions on the political issues. So you need national identity to unite this society, and it's nationalism that fosters a sense of belonging and unity amongst its citizens. It creates common ground on the basic principles that a society conforms to, and it transcends individual differences that we have on the issues. So this unity is crucial for stability. But national identity also helps to preserve and celebrate a country's unique cultural heritage, a heritage that some want to destroy. Passing down traditions, customs, and values from one generation to the next, it's so important. And this cultural continuity, it helps maintain a sense of national identity and pride, connecting people to the country's past. And a strong national identity leads to political stability throughout free societies, despite our differences on the political issues. When it comes to governance, the people within the nation state have an understanding of their rights, their responsibilities, and their duties. See, it's easy in an authoritarian society, right? In an authoritarian society, everyone's united through brute force by a dictator. But in a free society, it's much more difficult to manage. Now, when it comes to America and our national identity, Understand, we're the most unique country in the world. We don't have thousands of years of recorded history. We don't have those shared historical experiences. We don't have a shared culture or shared traditions. We're a melting pot. We're a hodgepodge. You take some of the traditions from your native ancestors and you adopt the American culture. So it makes it much more challenging that we don't have these things. This idea of national identity is much more difficult and fragile here in the United States than it is in other parts of the world. We are a bunch of different people from a bunch of different places, and somehow we come together to form one nation, e pluribus unum. Even more important, we figured out a way to make it work. Nowhere else in the world can you find a place like the United States. I mean, you have countries that exist where there's very, very slight differences in cultures and ethnicities, and they're warring factions against each other. Just look at a country like Afghanistan. Now, one aspect that's central to the American identity is the belief in self-rule, the belief in sovereignty, that we want limited government involvement in our lives, and we want to be able to exercise our free will. We want to control our lives and our destiny and be responsible for the outcome in our lives. We have the belief that public servants exist to serve us. And when I say serve us, I'm not talking about by giving us stuff. I'm talking about upholding concepts like the rule of law, representative government, civic participation. These are fundamental to how we understand and engage within our political system. You don't use the Justice Department to target political opposition as we are witnessing. You don't denigrate 50% of the country simply because they disagree with you politically, and you don't label them as domestic enemies or domestic terrorists. You have to have the institutions that recognize our worth, that understand that they answer to the people, that they're responsible to the people. Our institutions are not supposed to be interfering with elections simply because they don't like a political candidate. And this is what has led to political stability and legitimacy here in the United States. And not only here in the United States, but also around the world. Now, when you begin to tinker with that, when you begin to change it, when you begin to use the levers of power to target political opposition, well, you're ruining that uniqueness of America. You're denigrating American society, American national identity. And it's scary when we look around, because we're supposed to place a strong emphasis on individual rights and liberties, and that these liberties aren't bestowed to us by the government. They're inherent, because we're human beings. The Declaration of Independence enshrines our belief in our unalienable rights: the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to pursuit of happiness. Personal autonomy is important here in the United States. It shaped our society and our institutions, influencing everything from our founding up to the civil rights movement. And we celebrate, or at least we used to celebrate, qualities like innovation, hard work, entrepreneurship, a pioneering spirit. And when you look at what's going on, these are the ethos that propelled us to become the greatest superpower the world has ever known. It is this that has created the strongest and most stable middle class that the world has ever seen. And now it's being challenged. It's being challenged by ideologues who want to use the levers of power to destroy everything that we work so hard to contribute to. America was known for technological advancements, economic development, a culture of risk-taking and innovation. It's the American identity that influenced the global arena. We changed the course of human civilization, and we were able to claim the moral authority in a lot of cases. It's not that we're free from sin, but there's reasons that people refer to the United States as the benevolent superpower. Yet, as we slip further into Banana Republic territory, we can't claim this mantle anymore. The world is looking at us laughing. You have the dictators around the world saying, "Don't ever criticize us again." Our founding fathers were remarkable figures. I know people want to denigrate them, but they somehow figured out a way to make this all work. They planted the seeds of nationhood, and we gained our identity through the American experience, an experience that was built on hard work, grit, personal responsibility, self-reliance. That's part of our national identity. Emphasizing the importance of family, faith, and charity. That's part of our national identity. For generations, this national identity has been the motivation of millions of Americans to help our country make it a better place. Not through force, not through violence, not through government decrees, but because previous generations wanted their children to live a better life than they did. And our national identity, it served as a unifying force that provides a sense of belonging, informs our nation's values and political system, preserves our heritage, guides us in everyday life. But things are changing, and it's happening so rapidly. Now, it's not like it just started. It slowly started decades ago. But in the last several years, it's gone to warp speed. And I'm going to talk about that when we get back from this quick commercial break. Listen up, P.A.S. report audience. Experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. They're soon going to have over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half its rice reserves, and over half its wheat reserves. But when asked about it, China lies. And one expert says that they, of course, will never admit to doing something like that. Well, what does China know that we don't? When it comes to the global food shortages, China is the canary in the coal mine. And you have to understand, China is the world's #1 food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they can't afford to mess up. There'll be riots, civil panic, or even worse, when over 1 billion people can't eat, it's going to create a crisis for them. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for Americans like me and you? Food shortages. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits. It's hand-packed in the United States. The kits are compact, stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and I can attest to that because I use 4 Patriots, and their 5-star reviews on the website rave about the flavor and taste. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food by typing in the code P.A.S. at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com, use code P.A.S. to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food. That's 4patriots.com, use code PAS. Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, I explained the American identity and what it means to be American. It's the cornerstone belief that's allowed us to be extraordinarily successful, and it has allowed America to leave its mark on history that few other nations can claim. But things are changing, and we're witnessing an organized campaign to rewrite what defines America and what it means to be American. See, when you don't know what our national identity is, how are you supposed to defend it? You can't. And that's the thing. It's easy to change and manipulate the very idea of America when the people living in this country know very little about our founding and our history. They don't understand the role of federalism, the Constitution, the responsibilities of our institutions. And the elite know this. They know that they could use the lack of knowledge to push an agenda and reshape our identity. For the last several years, we've been bombarded with messaging that the whole purpose behind the creation of the United States was to continue the practice of slavery and perpetuate racism. It's a lie, but this messaging is very important because slavery and racism are evil. So if that's the basis of our country, if that's the basis of the founding of America, who would want to be part of that? And would you really want your national identity to be based in enslavement and hatred? So they promote this fake history to try and redefine our country, ultimately create a new national identity, not a national identity that's based on hard work and grit and personal responsibility and self-reliance, as I said before. Instead, they want to build a national identity, one of government dependency, a sense of entitlement, forced charity, where the government dictates what you must sacrifice for what they deem as the common good. And as government dependency increases, so too does state supremacy. The state reigns supreme. The more reliant we are on the government, the more power and control the government has over our lives. And how has that worked out for us? It's why you're bombarded with the messaging that the land of opportunity is gone, that the American dream no longer exists. While I won't deny that things are slipping away and quite rapidly, and that's my fear, I'm not ready to surrender, because if we make the right decisions now, if we make the smart decisions, we can turn this malaise around. Too many people have disengaged from the political process, and they need to get back involved, because we are the only line of defense now between the America that we used to know and an authoritarian America that we wouldn't even be able to recognize. We've done it before. We can do it again, albeit it may be harder now. And we're getting close to the point of no return, but there still is hope. Last week, I played a clip of the famous President Reagan speech where he explained that freedom is fragile. And rather than paraphrase what he said, I think it's worth hearing again because it's only a 50-second sound clip.
Our founding fathers here in this country brought about the only true revolution that has ever taken place in man's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. But only here did that little band of men so advance beyond their time that the world has never seen their like since, evolve the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny. But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I mean, was he wrong? When you look at what's going on today, was Ronald Reagan wrong when he said it's only one generation away? Because we're living through a period of a fading memory of what America used to be. And I don't want to accept that. I don't want to accept the idea that we passed a point where it can't be restored. I know you have people that are surrendering blue states. They're leaving these blue states going to red areas. But if you think that the federal government and the expansion of power by the feds is going to stop simply because you're in a red state, you're fooling yourself. Now, I brought up the idea of forced charity because this idea of the common good, it shows everything that you need to know because you're the ones that have to make sacrifices. When it comes to forced charity, it's where the government encourages and even mandates that everyone operates strictly for the common good. Not just the common good for our society, but the common good of the world. Remember, they're the ones pushing the notion that we're global citizens. They're pushing this globalist ideology. But what does common good really mean? And that's what I mean by forced charity. Listen, I could care less about whatever religion you subscribe to. It's irrelevant to me. I don't care if you follow any religion at all. You don't have to believe. That's fine. You could still be a good, decent person. Everyone has their own belief system, but I'm a Roman Catholic. To me, the whole point of charity is that you're not forced to do it, that it's based on free will. When you're forced to do it, that's not really considered charity. And it's easy to virtue signal when you have no stake in the game. It's easy for the government to dictate things. But when the government is mandating you act strictly for the common good of our country and the global population, what does that really mean? And what they're saying is you must sacrifice at your own expense, at your family's expense, at your country's expense. And think logically. What's in our interest, what's in our family's best interest, it may conflict with what's in the interest of this so-called common good that they never really define. And I'll take it to the micro level. If your neighbors are struggling and you're just making ends meet, would you take care of your neighbor and their family for the common good at the expense of your own children and your own family? Does that make much sense to you? Or let's say you're in my classroom, right? And it's for the common good that I want everyone to pass the course because we cannot let individuals fall behind. We can't let individuals fail no matter how little effort they put into the course. So in the name of the common good, I'm going to average out all the grades of the class. And that's what everyone gets. See, you may have broke your ass, you may have participated and studied, worked really hard on your papers, and you may have earned an A for the course. But in the name of common good, you got a B. So that the person who did nothing all semester, the person that put no effort in, never submitted any of their assignments, and they earned an F for the course, in the name of the common good, we're going to give that person a B. Does that sound fair to you? Does that sound righteous? I don't think so. Yet that's what these officials are telling us. Take illegal immigrants. They say in the name of the common good, we must accept anyone and everyone who wishes to come here. They say that we're the world's wealthiest country and we have a moral obligation to do just that the border is not broken, that we could easily absorb millions upon millions upon millions of people. Now, again, it's easy to say, and that's what public virtue signalers do. They like to be able to pat themselves on the back. But do we really have to accept anyone and everyone, especially if it means putting more pressure on already struggling communities, even if it means that it comes at the expense of American citizens and legal permanent residents? They're all phonies. If they really believed in this idea of the common good, then we should develop a program. If you really believe in the common good, then put your money where your mouth is. If you really support the open border policy and you advocate for this, then sponsor a migrant family. You are required to take a migrant family into your home. You have to financially support them, feed them, clothe them, provide them access to health care, and you have to do it for the common good. How many of those public virtue signalers would take me up on that? Now, if you did that, I may disagree with you on policy, but at least I would have respect for you. But you don't. You preach this nonsense. You have no skin in the game, and I don't respect that. It's like white privilege. If you're white and believe that you achieve success because of your whiteness, well, then step down for your position. Advocate that a person of color fills that position. And if you're not willing to do that, then at least donate 50% of your salary each year to those who lost out due to your whiteness. But you're frauds. You're never going to actually do something like that. because you like to preach about the common good, you like to preach about equity, as long as it doesn't infringe on your lifestyle. The second it makes you uncomfortable, then you change your tune. The second you have to actually sacrifice, then it's a completely different story. Look at Martha's Vineyard. It took less than 48 hours for the National Guard to be sent in to remove 50 or so migrants that were sent there. And I'll admit, it was a political stunt. However, they should have kept on sending migrants to Martha's Vineyard just to expose the hypocrisy of these frauds. See, globalism and state supremacy are diametrically opposed to individualism, the family, and the concept of the nation state. If loyalty is to the common good, then only the government and the state authority will be able to ensure the common good is being met. And it removes free will from our society. It removes the decision-making capabilities from the individual and the family. And that's what they want. Those advocating for state supremacy, they've weakened the most natural engine for creating and sustaining a human being's identity and purpose on this earth. It's why so many people, particularly young people, lack any sense of purpose in life. It's a contagion that's spreading. Bureaucrats believe they know what's better for your children than the parents do. They believe that the state has ultimate authority over your children, especially in matters relating to gender, morality, and psychological well-being. And they've openly stated this. You had Terry McAuliffe when he was running for governor in D.C. state this. You had President Biden state that when the children are in the classroom, they're the teacher's children, not yours. You have the union boss, Randy Weingarten, who destroyed our education system, saying the exact same thing. These people, they have a similar ideology to that of communist China. And you have governments that have now inserted themselves into the family, dictating parental rights, trying to take away and chip away at parental rights because they think that the government is the best vehicle in raising a child. Yet any child that's raised by the government, that's a ward of the state, is going to have a much more challenging life. They're going to have a much more difficult life. It doesn't mean that they can't overcome and succeed, but their odds of succeeding are reduced. But they want all children to be wards of the state now. That's what they want. And as the government exerts further influence and control over our lives, have we become happier? Has life become easier? Are we any better off? When we as parents don't have any control, do you think that may lead to misery, bitterness, a sense of hopelessness? See, they want to create total dependency on government. That's the end goal. They want to control the free flow of information because the free flow of information always represents a threat to their power in the state apparatus. It's why they push this censorship. It's why they deem oppositional points of view as misinformation and disinformation. You control information, you control minds. You control minds, you're able to usurp power and authority. And rather than bow to the altar of faith, you must bow to the altar of government and state authority. You must bow to the altar of intergovernmental organizations and the idea of the common good. However, globalism and state supremacy will only succeed if we allow it to. It only succeeds when we wave the white flag of surrender out of a sense of hopelessness. It only succeeds if we continue to disengage from the political process. State supremacy can only exceed when there is enough division and we're at each other's throats. Globalism and state supremacy will succeed when the American identity is completely erased. We're not there yet, and I do have hope. I think people are getting sick and tired. People are getting fed up, but they need to turn that into action. They need to get out there. They need to speak to other people. They need to speak to people that don't get involved in politics anymore because they're disgusted. If it wasn't for hope, if I didn't believe we could turn this around, I wouldn't be wasting my time doing this podcast. I would go on and enjoy the rest of my life, right? I mean, this podcast takes a lot of work for me to put together. So I see that I have the hope that we could right this ship, but we do have limited time. We have to remember, we have a set of shared values and beliefs that link us together and define what it means to be American. Democratic values, individual liberty, life, equality, the pursuit of happiness. If we know who we are, if we're aware of who we are, the America we know and love can be preserved. Now, I hope you found the content of this episode informative. If you did, please take 30 seconds, write a review, leave a 5-star rating on any podcast platform that allows it, and share the episode with your family and friends and on social media, as well as with those who disengage from the political process. I want to thank you for joining me, and you're going to want to tune in on Monday because I got a great interview lined up, and we're going to be talking about the police state, so make sure you tune in.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.